Welcome back to the channel, everyone, and welcome to your Enhancement Talent review for WWE SmackDown Live September 10th, 2019. Some stuff to definitely get into here. It was not an all-around good show. In fact, I definitely have a lot of things that I didn't like about this show, but we're going to get the chance to go here segment by segment. But we are going to start with the main talking point. And that is that Kevin Owens on this show was fired by Shane McMahon. We are going to go through all of that first, starting with right away. It was Chad Gable and Shane McMahon in a backstage setting. Shane informs Chad about Elias's injury. Gable assumes, for whatever reason, that he's going to get a first-round bye. Or not a first-round bye, but you know what I mean. That he's going to get a bye into the finals. Which, I don't know why the hell he would say that, as the babyface. And that whole thing just did not make any sense. Why he would say that. It made him look like a coward, and it made him look like he just wanted a free ride into the finals. So it should have been something different. So that made no sense at all. And Shane informs him that he will find an opponent later on in the night for Gable to face, with the winner going to the finals of the King of the Ring. So, later in the night, Shane goes into the locker room where we have Apollo Crews and Matt Hardy standing there talking to each other. So, Matt Hardy does still exist. That was surprising. But Shane McMahon comes in looking for Chad Gable, doing the, I'm looking for Chad Gable, but I can't seem to see him, as he's standing right in front of him, because you see he is slightly shorter than you. So stupid. We'll get to more of how stupid the short stuff is when I go through this whole thing. But, yeah. Shane informs Gable that he found him an opponent and that Elias approved of this opponent. And so Shane walks out of the shot and then walks back in the shot, and it's just like, ta-da, it's me. It was me all along, Gable. So, for one, Gable sold this like he was scared, which pissed me off. Like, Gable had no personality at all through, all of these segments. He was just like, yeah, whatever. Like he was fucking Orange Cassidy or something. There was nothing. He did not hardly say a word. So now later on in the night, Shane McMahon has bitch boy Kevin Owens in his office and gives him a referee shirt to be the ref for he and Gable's match, and essentially saying that he'll lift his fine if he helps him win. And he didn't say it in those words. I think he said he would reconsider it, which is what he told him to begin with. So, no reason to trust that. So then in the main event of this show, it comes down to Chad Gable versus Shane McMahon, with the special guest referee being Kevin Owens. And right away, Chad Gable hits the Chaos Theory German suplex. Owens does a fast count for the pin, and Chad Gable wins immediately. But you looked and there was still 10 or more minutes left on that show, so you knew that something was going to happen. So Shane then gets out of the ring, grabs a mic, and says, no, this match is now 2 out of 3 falls. But he leaves Owens as the ref. So, with Shane being an authority figure, why wouldn't he just stack the deck more in favor of himself and have somebody else other than Kevin Owens who just fast counted him out of the match? And Shane didn't even seem to care about that, so that immediately made no sense. And then, when we restart this 2 out of 3 falls match, Gable rolls up Shane with a crucifix, but Owens doesn't count. And then Shane rolls up Gable and gets a fast count, but kicks out. Like, what the hell? Why did Owens fast count Shane in the first match, but then when he restarted it, Owens suddenly decided to help Shane? This made no sense. There was no consistency in what Owens was doing, or even what Shane was doing, to not see what happened in the first fall and do something different. So this all made no sense. There was no consistency. The match gets restarted. Like I said there, the roll-ups happen. Gable hits a moonsault, but Owens does a slow count. Shane gets a chair in. Owens tries to stop him, so Shane hands him the chair to allow him to dispose of it, so he would turn his back to Shane, about to go for a low blow. Which, why he needs to turn his back when he's helping Shane anyway, I don't know. But Shane goes for a low blow, but Gable counters it into an ankle lock. Shane eventually taps out. He was in this thing for far too long. But he eventually taps out. And Owens indeed calls for the bell. So, Owens went from helping Gable in the first match to trying to screw over Gable in the second match, but then in the end still called for the bell on the submission. So, I don't really understand it. Like, I get the point was supposed to be that he was conflicted, but you didn't do that in the first one. He just immediately fast counted Shane. So, I don't understand the whole point in this. And after the bell, Owens tells Shane that, I don't know what I was supposed to do. You tapped out. And, they did that whole thing. Owens goes to leave, but Shane attacks him, lays him out from behind, and then grabs a mic and simply says, "You're fired." And then he gets in Owens' face and just keeps saying that you're fired, you're fired, you're fired. This whole thing is so dumb and made no sense. Why Owens went from screwing Shane in the first match to then helping him, to then counting the submission. Owens looks like a complete bitch, coming off the high that he had throughout the whole night, or not through the whole night, but the whole angle with Shane in the first place, leading to the SummerSlam match, where he was probably the most over guy on that SummerSlam card, to now where we are now. And it's completely halted any momentum Owens had, and I don't think that they will be able to recover that. But, I mean, they can recover it. Like, this can be turned around, but either way, it hasn't been a good storyline, and there's just been no need for it. It would have been easier if this just ended after SummerSlam. But, if they were going to fire him, I don't know why they didn't just have him lose at SummerSlam. Because his career was on the line, so you could have gotten the same result and not have him back down. And if they weren't going to do that, if Shane was going to fire him anyway, then they should have just had Owens stick to his guns in this match and screw over Shane to begin with, like he did in the first match. But he did not hold his ground, and instead he just backed down like a bitch, and then still got fired. So I don't know what that's supposed to do for Owens. So that sucks. That absolutely 100% sucks. And now we have to go through the point with, like, the John Cena retirements and firings that he's going to come back. It's just a matter of when. And, now, people are, like, speculating, like, oh, he could go and be on the first NXT show on USA next week. Yeah, but he was fired. So, I don't know if that means that Shane was only firing him from SmackDown, But that doesn't seem to really make any sense. If Shane is a McMahon and can fire him in whole, then I would think that's what that meant. And the more damaging thing that I think was done here is what it did to Chad Gable. Because this, by all means, should have been the night about Chad Gable. But instead, he was completely overshadowed by this angle and just was the third wheel in it. And really, this whole tournament hasn't done Gable a ton of favors. And even though they're pushing him, even though he's winning and now he's in the finals, you know, he won his first 2 matches with roll-ups. One against Shelton Benjamin, which if you need to fluke your way to a victory over Shelton Benjamin in 2019, then I can't really take you that seriously. And then the other one against Andrade, which was better. It was a good match. But he still, it was in a fluky manner. It wasn't decisive. And then for this, he eventually, overcame the odds and beat Shane and tapped him out. But in the first match, he won by a fast count. And, a win over Shane, in theory, should mean something with all of the guys that Shane has beaten over these past few months, including Roman Reigns, of all people. But it still doesn't, because it's Shane. It doesn't work for me. I don't really take someone that more seriously because they beat Shane McMahon. I'm sorry. So, the other thing that has not helped Gable throughout this tournament is that they've made the whole storyline and the whole thing, the underdog storyline, being about Chad Gable being short. And it's not like Gable has done anything throughout this tournament to shut that criticism down. He hasn't had the moment where he's like, I may be short, but I'm better at wrestling than you are. I have a legit amateur background, and I can tap you out with ease. He tapped out Shane, and that was a decisive enough win, but it's Shane. And so, not big on that, because it's essentially just been, you're short, but now you're fluking into wins now. Rather than focusing on how good of a wrestler that Chad Gable is. And, they easily could have done it differently. And I think the lack of any sort of personality or babyface fire that Chad Gable has had in his segments has done him no favors. Looking at the promos with Shane this week, where he was just practically mute and had the same facial expression throughout all of them, to the one with Samoa Joe last week, where Joe was calling him mentally weak, and, he can tell that the short jokes bother him, and he's mentally weak and all that. And, Chad just stands there and takes it and does not have a rebuttal. It just makes him look like a joke. And it makes him look like a joke that has managed to fluke his way into victories. So, I don't care for this. I love Chad Gable. I think Chad Gable is a fantastic wrestler. I don't like how they've done this. And, if you would have told me before the tournament that, they were going to go in with the Chad Gable being the underdog and making it all the way to the finals, I would have thought, wow, that'll be awesome. But they've made it about height rather than wrestling. And then him playing the third wheel in the Shane McMahon and Kevin Owens saga tonight, it all did him no favors. And now we get the King of the Ring final, which will be Chad Gable going against Baron Corbin. They said at one point that this was going to be on Raw, but it's always been said, throughout the whole tournament, that this is going to finish at Clash of Champions. So now there's a conflict of when the match is even going to take place. So I don't know. I don't know why you wouldn't do it at the pay-per-view, other than you already have so many freaking matches. So maybe they just want to cut time, but being that they've promoted this whole thing to finish at Clash of Champions for the last month, I don't know why they would just change it at the last hour to having it on Raw. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And, on a pay-per-view, it would give Corbin and Gable a lot more time and no commercials to actually, really have a good match. Which, I expect it to be a good match, because Corbin has actually been really good throughout this tournament. And I'm not sure I want him to win, but I expect him to win. I expect Corbin to end up beating Gable in the end. And I think they think that they've done Gable a lot of favors by just getting him to the finals. So they feel like it won't be a big deal for him to lose. But I don't feel like that's ultimately true. And, I'm not all against King Baron Corbin. If you're gonna put that gimmick on someone, I think that Corbin can pull it off. And I've been into Corbin lately, so I'm not totally against it. I do maintain the opinion that I had on last night's review, that there are guys that could have used it more than Corbin, like Ricochet, Ali, Buddy Murphy, Andrade, Cedric Alexander was a big one that I thought could have used going to the finals in this. But, Corbin isn't the worst case scenario. And at least we are not going to get Baron Corbin versus Elias. Which, Elias, I don't know if he actually got hurt or if it was a storyline to get Shane in there. But either way, we don't have a Baron Corbin versus Elias or a Baron Corbin versus Shane McMahon ending to this tournament. So now we'll get to the full review, but first I do want to mention that at some point, like during the commercials on this show, as if you've ever been to a SmackDown taping, what they normally do is they announce the dark main event to get you to stay through 205 Live so you can see the main event at the end. So they announced that it would be The Fiend Bray Wyatt versus the B-Team of Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel. And what I don't understand is, so they advertised The Undertaker going into the show, like the same way they advertised Stone Cold for the Raw show in MSG. But why not try to use your current guys and see if they can draw tickets? Because in this case, The Fiend wrestling should be an attraction. And so for you to announce it to be the dark match during the night, why not advertise that in the ticket sales before the show, that, you'll be able to see a live Fiend match? I mean, I know that this show in particular, it was being reported that they were having trouble selling tickets, at least, a couple weeks ago. I don't know if it ended up selling out or not, but, I can't imagine why this wouldn't be advertised, because I think there are at least a good portion of people that would be more inclined to buy a ticket just to see the Fiend's entrance. So that didn't make a lot of sense to me. It tells me that it was probably just thought of at the last minute. But yeah, they definitely could have used that to sell some tickets. But we get to the beginning of this show, now that we've got all of that out of the way. Undertaker's gong immediately starts off the show. He cuts a whole promo of, "These hallowed grounds is what I once called my home, and I miss my home, and I just need one more soul." And of all people, Sami Zayn interrupts. He comes out and respectfully, quote-unquote, tells The Undertaker that he should retire and that it should be himself, Sami Zayn, opening these shows at Madison Square Garden. Sami tells Undertaker to leave the ring. Taker obliges, hands Sami the mic, goes to leave the ring. Sami celebrates with his back turned to the Undertaker, who of course steps back in the ring and choke slams Sami. And it was a cool visual that Sami's hat flies off in the choke slam. That was nice. And, I'm sure this was a really cool thing for Zayn to be a part of. And, just like Austin last night, I don't really have a big deal about it as far as the way Austin stunnered, who was it? AJ Styles last night. So I don't really have a big deal about it because Undertaker is the one that they were advertising to sell tickets, and so you had to do something with them. But, however, two things. Where the hell was Nakamura? Like, Sami Zayn and Nakamura just started this partnership with Zayn managing Nakamura. And Nakamura was in the next segment, but he was not involved in this Undertaker thing. Which I understand the whole point of that was that they're not going to have, they don't want to have Taker take out Nakamura too when he's about to have a championship match. But it's a bit of a logic gap that Zayn would be out there without Nakamura anywhere in sight, only for Nakamura to then be in the next segment. So it's not like he wasn't there. If Nakamura had a match in the second hour, maybe you could say he hadn't arrived to the building yet or something. But, yeah, this all was, that part at least didn't make sense. And the other thing was that the reports, I believe Wrestling Observer, was that Undertaker was going to be there to be involved in a storyline. I ain't seen one. I mean, that's all. Like, I ain't seen no storyline unless Sami Zayn getting chokeslammed is a storyline. Which, if that's the case, then I guess anything qualifies as a storyline now. After that, we had Miz versus Andrade. Miz wins clean. And also Nakamura was on commentary speaking Japanese, I believe. So there's that. Yeah, Miz wins clean with the skull-crushing finale. Whatever. I mean, like, it's a shame what they're doing with Andrade, that he's just fodder for the Miz to beat going into a championship match. That kind of, like, actually really sucks. But I guess Miz needed to win. And so, whatever. We had Mandy Rose versus Nikki Cross. But Mandy Rose is going to cut a promo before the match, making fun of Nikki Cross for being ugly, Mandy Rose says. Really? I don't know what happened to be a star. So, for one, ignoring the obvious of the double standards with the bullying and all that. Like, I understand, to an extent, that it's just storytelling, right? The bad guy is going to say bad things about the good guy. And then, at the end, the good guy is going to get the comeuppance and beat the bad guy. So, I get that to an extent, but I don't understand, like, why it has to be this way and why it was so overt. And the other thing is, I hate the double standard, and not the double standard I just talked about, but the double standard between the way they book men's storylines versus women's storylines. Because, and it happens all the time, it's not always in a degrading way. In these women's storylines, where they talk about each other's looks, like they might say, like, "Oh, you're pretty" or whatever. I think Nia Jax said that about Ronda Rousey during their program. But you wouldn't see Brock Lesnar being the heel and Seth Rollins being the babyface, and then Brock Lesnar says, "I'm better than you, Seth, because I'm prettier than you." For one, that wouldn't be true, because Brock isn't the prettiest man. But you get my drift. Like, it's a complete double standard, and it focuses away from the wrestling, which it just continues to drive this gap between women's wrestling and just wrestling. It's all wrestling. Nothing should be about how you look or how you're ugly and I'm pretty and everyone wants to look like me. It shouldn't be about that. It should be about me versus you, and I'm gonna beat you because I'm better than you, or whatever. Like, this is just so lazy. It is baffling that in 2019 that this is still an issue. But, like, I don't understand it. And I don't know if part of the problem is that, most of the writers are guys. And, it's just, whether intentionally or not, the whole thing is just very patronizing. And I remember a while back they were saying that Dana Warrior was supposed to be involved more in the writing for things like this, but I don't know what her role exactly is, but either way, there's not a ton of women writers there. And so it just comes off as so patronizing that this is what we focus on rather than the wrestling. So I don't get that. I don't understand it at all. But nonetheless, I mean, they ended up having a fine short match after the whole "You're Ugly" stuff. Alexa Bliss music hits. Then Nikki Cross's music hits, and she's so pissed off that she bolts straight to the ring and immediately assaults Mandy. But even though she was so pissed off, she was still able to wait for Alexa Bliss's music to finish and her music to start. So, she was pissed. She was just sitting back there like, just wait until my entrance music hits. I'm gonna run down there and I'm gonna beat you. Like, whatever. Either way, it was a fine, short match, and Cross ends up winning with a roll-up. So, whatever. And another thing, like, I don't know if Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss are babyfaces either. Because one week they are, and one week they aren't. So, I don't know what the hell. But either way, the match was fine. I did not care for the way they went about the whole thing. Like, I understand that that's in Mandy's character, too. That, she's the golden goddess or whatever. But just tone it down a bit. Heavy Machinery have a squash match after this. I don't understand why. We've already seen them rise to having a title match on pay-per-view. So I don't know why we need to have them have squash matches now. But whatever. Erick Rowan comes out. He's supposed to explain his actions. And he comes out and he has the shittiest promo. It's all of these "you people" and "you see." Eventually Roman Reigns interrupts, and thank God. And they have a wicked brawl. Like, as far as brawls go, and they do these pull-apart brawls all the time, this was really fucking cool. They brawl into the crowd. Rowan ends up grabbing this fan, quote-unquote, and powerbombing him into Roman Reigns and the security that was surrounding him. I laughed hard at this, mostly just because of the dude's facial expressions as he's getting lifted up by Rowan. They were great. If I have to tell you, it was a plant. I know. I know, shocker. They end up brawling to the top of the ramp, and Rowan is going to use a camera, but it's like a gym camera that's on like a moving like stanchion sort of thing. He ends up using a camera and just flinging the thing into Roman Reigns, and that's how he knocks down Roman. And that was it. And like, I'm interested, or like, I don't know if interested is the right word, but I don't know why they went the route of having Rowan cut that promo. And it's also, like, the promo Rowan cut last week sufficed. Like, that was enough for him to say for the next several weeks. And he delivered it very well, and he was very good in that promo, even though I was very critical of the overall ending of SmackDown last week. But Rowan was really good last week. And then this week, I hardly remember anything he said, and it was just boring. And just formulaic WWE promo. Like, that's why he was getting whatted. That and because Steve Austin was there last night. So, I don't know. Like, I'm intrigued in what they're doing with Rowan, because I like Rowan. I mean, I'm not sure if they're going to actually push him as a singles guy. Like, I still halfway assume that the way this is going to end is that Bryan is going to come out with Rowan, and it'll just be like, haha, it was a swerve, bro. Thankfully, Vince Russo isn't booking this, as far as we know, so hopefully that won't happen, but it seems, it wouldn't be surprising with the way this storyline has gone that they would do something that makes absolutely no sense. Bayley has a squash match against Ember Moon. You know, cool. This was set up after a backstage promo where Ember was questioning what Bayley was doing and why she attacked Becky and yada yada yada. Ember Moon's already dead, so I don't, like, it's like that Simpsons thing, like, stop, she's already dead. I've already ranted enough about Ember Moon during that whole SummerSlam build, so I'm not going to go into more of it now, of their terrible treatment of this woman. But, yeah, she gets squashed here by Bayley. Bayley at least gets a win back after being pinned last night, I guess. And her and Charlotte, who was on commentary, have a stare-off in the ring, and Bayley backs away with a confident smile on her face. So, there you go. After this, and I believe this is the last thing we'll get to because I already did the main event, Kofi Kingston comes out and reminisces on the night he destroyed Randy Orton at Madison Square Garden in 2008. Of course, them being in Madison Square Garden tonight. Randy comes out through the crowd, calling Kofi stupid again, says that Kofi gloats about the only two things he's done in the last 10 years being the night in MSG and winning the world title once. Randy runs through all the things he's done in the last 10 years, winning Royal Rumbles and Money in the Banks and several championships. Kofi comes in after Orton through the crowd. Randy ambushes him with a chair, so Kofi falls for yet another Randy Orton trap. Orton tries to get an elevated DDT on Kofi on a table that was there in the not the crowd, but like the spot tucked away, like next to the stage, whatever that is. But Kofi ends up getting out of this. He starts hitting Randy with the chair. He goes to put Randy on the table, but Orton stops him. Orton puts Kofi on the table and goes for a chair shot, but Kofi kicks Orton as he's reeling back for this chair shot. And I didn't even see this the first time, but like when it went through as it was going, but then I noticed that the table broke. It inadvertently breaks, but Kofi gets a second table, so I guess they were prepared for this to happen. And Kofi puts Orton through it with a boom drop off of the guardrail, which got some serious distance. This was a fine go-home angle, but I still don't understand a lot of this feud. Like, the thing a few weeks ago where Randy read the letter from Kofi's kid, and the bringing of Kofi's family into this storyline, but nothing has come of it. It hasn't been followed up on at all. Like, I don't understand what the point of doing that was, or why they couldn't do something else. Because, like, we're not invested in Kofi's family. And I don't mean that to sound disrespectful. I just mean that in that Kofi's family are not on TV every week. They're not characters in this universe. So I don't understand why we often do the thing where we bring those family members into a storyline when there's no reason to care about them. Like the stuff they did with the Revival taking out Woods with the chair, taking out his knee, like that was good stuff, and making Kofi watch. Like, we're more invested in Kofi's friendship with Big E and Xavier Woods than we are with Kofi's family. So I don't really get the whole point in that, and they did it and never went back to it. Maybe they will at some point during the pay-per-view, but either way, this was the go-home show to Clash of Champions. Did not think it was a great show. There wasn't, I don't know if there really was a good match on this show. Like, the main event, the King of the Ring match, was all smoke and mirrors and wasn't focused on wrestling, so that wasn't really that good. The Nikki Cross and Mandy match was fine, but the way they set it up was stupid. And Bayley versus Ember was a squash. Heavy Machinery had a squash. Miz versus Andrade wasn't anything special. So, like, probably the best thing on this show was the, as far as action-wise, was the Roman Reigns and Erick Rowan brawl. That was definitely the best thing on the show, actually. So, that's where we're left with. We're left with a fired Kevin Owens, a King of the Ring final that we have no idea what day it's going to take place, and that was SmackDown. So there you go. All around, not a great show, but either way, we'll be back here probably a little bit later in the week with Clash of Champions predictions. Then we'll have the Clash of Champions review Sunday night. And then we'll get right back to it with Raw and SmackDown. And next week we'll be doing NXT in their first week on USA. So we will have a busy slate. But we'll get into all of that when we get there. Until then, appreciate you guys watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to subscribe to the channel and be able to keep up with all those things. Leave a comment on anything you might have thought on SmackDown. And until next time, later.